You can't replace part of the brain. Like, you
treat them the same.
The source of truth for the medtech industry.
Coexists with the prophets.
PillBot understands things automatically.
Number one show in the medtech industry.
So Stryker got ahead of that and changed in the 90s, built $1 billion company that held up high, a lot of things.
State of MedTech with your host, Omar M. Khatib. Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. I'm excited for our guest today, which is Tori Smith, the CEO over at Endiatix. Really interesting company. You've probably seen this company because on the PR side, they've been featured in so many interesting publications and magazines and videos. I think most recently, the guys from, Discovery, who have that show, they had you on their show, right?
Yeah, so it was Adam Savage of Mythbusters fame who put us on his new channel over on YouTube called Tested with Adam Savage.
That's right.
Super proud to work with him and his crew.
That's awesome. I love it. Before we get into it, just a quick reminder for our guests, a couple things I want to read out to you. Number one, if you're an early stage founder, and we all know how difficult it is to raise awareness with investors, maybe you're not as talented as Torrey and his team in terms of getting some press, right? But if you're trying to raise awareness with investors, you're also trying to get some commercial pipeline going, finding early adopters. That's what my team here at Khatib & Co. do. We're essentially your outsourced marketing department where we use things like email marketing, social media, and more specifically AI to figure out how do we get attention and more importantly, translate that into the behavior change to get adoption of your product, build that pipeline out, and get you in front of more investors. So if you're interested in learning more, go to khatibandco.com. And for those of you who are investors, yes, all these companies are super interesting. With Tori and his team, you can check out more on their website, Endiatix, spelled Endiatx.com. But if you want to learn more about other early stage companies, we had a lot of deal flow here at State of MedTech. Some of these companies haven't even raised money. So if you're interested in that, check the show notes below. We have a form just for you as an investor. Fill out that form in terms of the check size you like to write, the technologies you're interested in. It's free to be on that list, and we'll actually send you deals that we find because our whole goal is to try and connect investors like you with early stage companies ahead of time so you can fund them and help them get to market. And the last piece before we get into it, if you're a medtech founder, we know how difficult it is to find the right early adopters. You have to have data. But the problem with a lot of data sources is that they're clunky, they're too difficult to use sometimes, and they're really expensive. This is why for us personally here at the State of MedTech and Khatib & Co., we use Alpha Sophia. We love their commercial payer data sets. We're able to look up physicians and see what their procedure volume is, what is their practice like, even what social media platforms do they use. So to get a free trial of that and get 3 free reports, go to alphasophia.com/Omar and see for yourself how good it is. So with that being said, Tori, let's get on to our episode.
Let's do it. I gotta say though, I wish I had known you a couple of years back when we were coming out of the accelerator, just because the tools that you guys are offering is basically, that's a suite that every medtech founder is going to need. Like, we didn't really realize how valuable PillBot was going to be until we started speaking with the GIs and they said, holy cow, if you can actually pull this off, this is something I could use most of the time in my practice. And then you're thinking like, oh my goodness, are we crossing the uncanny valley from using it 1% of the time? We're using it every day. So I'm super grateful that you make all this stuff available to the community. Thank you.
Oh, 100%. My big mission is that I love our industry. And if I can find a way of not only helping these companies be successful, finding those early adopters and commercializing, but more importantly, getting money. Because let's face it, like even these days, a lot of our venture capital firms are not deploying the checks that are needed. So we have to find new ways to fund our companies. I think you guys have done a fantastic job over there in terms of you have a very amazing visual product, which we'll get into in a moment, but not everybody does that well. And if there's ways that we can help, I'm very happy to. So maybe start with like just a quick 30-second background on yourself. Like before you founded this company, what were you doing beforehand?
Sure. My background is aerospace engineering. I'm just inspired by all the movies and sci-fi, air shows and all that good stuff like many kids are.
Favorite sci-fi movie? Go.
It's got to be Inner Space. Endiotics is literally just a kid watches Inner Space, grows up to be an aerospace engineer. So it could be just like Dennis Quaid, the test pilot in that movie. And we're just trying to build the tiny robots that we can put into the human body to go find cancer and whoop its butt.
I love it. And what I love also is how you guys frame what you guys do. So on your website, you essentially called a moving eyeball in the stomach, which is fantastic.
That's the idea, right? Like I'm holding an advanced prototype of PillBot in my hand. This is a This is a fancy one. It's got more thrusters, more capability. It's physically smaller, but all we're trying to do with PillBot is basically take the tip of the modern endoscope and just virtualize it so that a doctor would have the ability to maneuver that endoscopic tip around inside the human body, get that live video feed, get to look around and figure out what's wrong, but do it over a Zoom call, right? Maybe have AI step in and do the screening part. And that's where a moving eyeball in the stomach is just a really good way to describe what PillBot is today.
And I love that we're diving right into it. Let me ask you about that real quick, because essentially you're disrupting the endoscopy market, which is, I don't know how big of a market it is. It is a huge one, though, multi-billion-dollar market. How big of a market is that just here in the US, roughly?
We're looking at probably like an actionable market of about $55 billion if we look at EGDs globally. I think here in the United States, I just go by people. It's something like 7.5 or so million upper endoscopies are done every year on Americans, and about 10 times that globally. What that really means is that in rough terms, we are spending tens, sometimes hundreds of billions of dollars every year, but we're only really getting that healing technology into about 1% of people in any given year. And so the obvious question is, how do we make health technology inexpensive and accessible so that the remaining 99% of the population can benefit from it? And so our tool, while PillBot will likely be punchy and disruptive in the sense that it's a great new technology, it's a wonderful way to approach an upper endoscopy, the things that we're going to do to expand the market, all of the disease that we're going to find that can only appropriately be dealt with a proper endoscopy in a hospital, means that we see tremendous expansion. So we don't really see any stakeholders out there that are going to be sad that PillBot has entered the market. Just a lot more patients getting treated earlier is what we're super excited about.
So what I love is that right now there's a shortage of like specialists in the United States. And so even if you're able to scale that out, it's not enough to meet the patient demand. And PillBot seems not only a technological innovation, but essentially like it solves a problem of scale. And so the current, if you had to think about the 2 or 3 problems that endoscopies pose, what are those things, and like how exactly is PillBot solving that?
Gosh, so from like a patient standpoint, it's going to require sedation typically. That's no fun. It's going to require a hospital visit, which just means that it's inevitably going to involve some kind of a waiting process, a gatekeeping process, and it's going to cost money, right? All those hospital visits really add up over time. But then the really frustrating thing that we are excited to be poking on is that if I'm a gastroenterologist and I just spent years and years becoming this amazing, skilled doctor ready to go treat disease and find problems and fix them, the vast majority of the time we're doing upper endoscopies, we're looking through clean stomachs, and you're just wasting so much of your time and the footprint of our healthcare industry to get all these negative results. And so we're thinking, man, we need an inexpensive little scout that can go out into the general population, find the real problems, bring those to the clinic so that doctors can actually be doctors, and then expand the access to those procedures to people that would have trouble getting through all those hospital visits. So it's a kind of thing where we're trying to create a scenario where patients are accessed more quickly and inexpensively, and then doctors get to do the exciting work they actually trained for.
Yeah, and I love the way you position that. And it's interesting to share, like when I was meeting with your team, that something like 4 out of 5 upper endoscopies really just don't detect anything. And so there's, of course, a huge cost to the healthcare system, but more importantly, the cost of getting that patient in, the time, et cetera. And then the other side of it is, I wonder how many patients who have something don't get detected because it's too much of a hassle to go to the hospital, do all these things. And then the idea of doing an endoscopy before anybody gets a procedure, they're going to look it up and how it gets done. Some people are probably afraid of that, versus this is just looks like a big multivitamin you swallow.
I call it a big scary pill, right? I want to have some fun with the size of it. I want to acknowledge to people that we always want to make it smaller. And when they see this robot in your hand, you're like, do you really want to swallow this? I don't want to try to push this on people. Instead, I just want to say, this is a pretty cool robot, and it might be able to affect your healthcare outcome in a really good way. The key here is I have a secret mission that I'll share with you, which is PillBot is going to go after the world's tummy aches, and it's going to be a great scout. It's going to make sure that healthy patients learn that their stomach is okay, that their pain came from somewhere else so they can continue to get properly diagnosed and triaged. It's going to find illnesses like ulcers and lesions and all sorts of stuff like that, get people proper endoscopies or proper treatment. While we're doing that, we are going to get into the stomachs of people who don't know that they have a stomach cancer. They're not feeling it yet. They're at stage 1, maybe stage 2. But because they had a tummy ache for an ulcer or something simple like that, we bring them into the PillBot ecosystem. PillBot catches that cancer that no one knew about, but we catch it, say, 5-10 years earlier, before you would feel it, before you would be stage 3, stage 4, and unfortunately, much closer to terminal. So we see PillBot as easy, accessible healthcare for all, but the secret mission is we want to catch all those stomach cancers so early that an oncologist can actually cure that cancer and send that patient home to their family.
Yeah, and I really love that mission because I think that's the key here for what, and this is why I like devices compared to, let's say, pharma or anything else. So with devices, they're like really life-saving interventions. And I think the key for healthcare moving forward is like something like PillBot. If you have a family history of stomach cancer, then you shouldn't be waiting until like your 40s or 50s to get like an endoscopy. You can do it this way, which is for the patient a lot easier. And at least from what you're telling me, it's going to be more cost efficient for the healthcare system, because for an insurance company, they'd much rather pay for something like this, screen it, and get caught than wait.
Oh man, if I'm a payer, it's such a weird thought. But put yourself in the mindset of an insurance payer. Every time that patient gets treated or goes to the hospital, that bill comes to you, and you have to pay that bill. And so you have this aversion to this huge stack of bills. And if we're saying, hey, we could turn 5 hospital visits that you're going to have to pay for, that result in an EGD that you're going to have to pay for, we could turn that into a PillBot procedure right up front that's super cheap and affordable. Holy cow, we might save you 10x on the payout for a given patient just to reach the same outcome, which is, does their stomach look okay? So it's fun starting to play with technology that has several orders of magnitude worth of improvement in it. And then we're just going to see how far down that road we can take it.
That's amazing. And so earlier this year, it looks like you guys essentially are in the process, or you will be completing your clinical trials. Where are you in your regulatory pathway?
My chairman's getting on a plane in a couple hours. He's going to head to New Zealand. I'm forgetting, are we phase 3 or phase 4 with our IRBs out at the Waitemata Clinic in Auckland? Amazing. Dr. Cam Shower is helping us with our pilot IRBs. This is where we've been tuning the user interface. How big do you want the video? Where do you want the controls? Do you want the arrows for maximum thrust on the right, on the left? We're having a lot of fun tuning the graphical user interface. But the whole idea is the last tweaks, mechanical, electrical, software, before we approach a design freeze, are happening in those IRB trials right now. And I can say PillBot's starting to look pretty cool. Like, it's starting to be the kind of thing where you just throw it into a fish tank and it's an amazing platform. Then you swallow it. And if you manage to drink some water, rinse out the goo pretty well, we're actually at that initial operating capability. Now, we haven't been through FDA yet, right? We have some great meeting with FDA back in December with the pre-sub, but the real pivotal trial is coming up later this year. And we're going to partner with a leading healthcare institution in the GI space and just make sure that when we do several hundred patients, we're doing it under the right kind of protocol and basically just prove that a device like PillBot could virtualize endoscopy for hundreds of millions of people.
That's amazing. And then in terms of your commercial plan, I know you're a little bit far out still, rough, because you're still on your regulatory pathway. What does that commercial plan look like for the investors who are listening in the audience? They're going to be curious about that. Where do you see this essentially being adopted here in the US, and how?
Sure. So we're looking at a strong chance that we might be able to get fully FDA approved by next year. But please understand that's the CEO running his mouth, and I'm hoping we can stick to that project plan. Looking at market entry early 2026, if all the gears continue turning. And rollout is going to be initially with all of the gastroenterologists and clinics that have been so helpful for the last 5+ years of this company's life. So When we look at our scientific advisory board, we have a group of gastroenterologists that represent perhaps the top 3 healthcare institutions in the world that do gastroenterology as a leading competency. And so having so many GIs basically super excited about where PillBot is going means that honestly, we're probably going to have trouble keeping up with external demand for a little while. We have a pilot production line right behind me, and we could probably build 1 device per minute here before we need to expand into our neighbor suites and have some interesting conversations there.
That's amazing. Something that I thought was really interesting, and I'm going to pull up a video of PillBot so people can see it. People who are watching on Spotify and YouTube can see this. But this is essentially a one-time use thing. Like, you're not swallowing this and then having to fish it out of the toilet or something.
Oh man, yeah, there are people that do that with a certain camera capsule tech. But with Endiatix, we really decided with PillBot, let's make robots that first and foremost move under their own power without any capital equipment, so that we always have the telemedicine angle available to us, because that's what transforms a person's day from a hospital-based procedure to staying in their own home, right? I want you feeling safe and secure. I want you to have dignity. I want you to have agency, and get on a Zoom call, much like this call right now, with your doc and swallow this pill, and the doctor can actually speak with you. This is bedside manner, right? As they're piloting this thing around in your stomach, and they'll show you what they're finding. That's critical for us. And so if we're trying to give people the Apple family of products, like integrated, slick, modern experience, that does not involve digging around in the toilet. That's just not something I really want to ask a person to do. And so we've worked super hard to get the bill of materials cost well under $100, so that no matter how we begin to release this in the US market and beyond, because every market's going to have its own regulatory reimbursement structure, and we plan to build these all over the world so that we can make sure they're affordable and accessible to everyone. No matter where you are in the world, I just want you to have dignity and agency. And I want this to be a single-use disposable, so it can be super simple. It doesn't have to prove that it could be used a bunch of times and sterilized and all that stuff. Let's just make it so inexpensive that just about everyone has access to not only 1 PillBot if they have a tummy ache, but honestly, maybe a series of PillBots. Let's use a PillBot to screen. Let's use a PillBot to go after a known symptom. Let's give that patient the appropriate drugs based on whatever we diagnose. Send another PillBot in there to see if it actually fixed it a few weeks later, right? Let's make this like a series of data collection opportunities. And that really is like the hidden value proposition commercially, is just, my goodness, the amount of data that we can gather with products like PillBot all over the world in people every day means that we're going to be able to understand human health and how we can improve it in ways that we probably just would have trouble predicting right now.
Yeah, and I love that mission, and I love the way that you describe that, because I think, especially post-COVID, there's a different level of expectation of care that patients have. And especially even me, I work from home, I run my own business, so I control my time, but I don't like going to the doctor's office or the hospital. I just feel like it's a waste of my time, and I just want to do things from home. Let me share my screen real quick and bring up this video, because I think it's so cool to see. So first, I want to just direct people. Again, this is the website. They can go to Endiatx, Endiatx.com. So here's the PillBot itself, a moving eyeball in the stomach. Again, I love that tagline. And it looks like a sexy product. That's what I love. And then this is when you were doing your thing with Adam Savage. So let me press play so people could see, and you can maybe give us some color commentary.
Yeah, basically, we have seen drones flying around. We've seen live videos from drones. We've even seen drones go and do things. And so we're saying, can we build a drone that can maneuver inside the human body? And if we start in the stomach and we can do amazing work there, probably we're going to want to go beyond the stomach. So PillBot is just a friendly little moving eyeball for your tummy, but it's really the beginning of a new market category, which is micro robotics in the human body. We want to go everywhere with this, and we want to work with people out in university right now, or with kids who are thinking about what they want to study and what they want to do with their lives. We want to be inspiring people to say, PillBot's the foundation. What are you going to build on the foundations? Probably has to be smaller, probably has to have tools, probably needs to do amphibious motion, like maybe it crawls through layers of tissue to get to a brain tumor, right? We hope that people see this as the beginning of an amazing adventure into the human body.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think it's really cool on the control side. So looks like it's being controlled by an Xbox control. Is that essentially what you guys would be using with the physicians, or are you going to have a different way of controlling it?
Honestly, my favorite control interface is just my phone, right?
Oh,
So
very cool.
a touchscreen app on your phone should be fine to control PillBot. You could have a doctor on a cruise ship just relaxing, sunning themselves, doing endoscopy after endoscopy with PillBot, but just from their phone. And the patient could be on that same cruise ship or anywhere else in the world or off world, given where we're going in the next few decades, right? The idea is totally dematerialize the traditional hospital industrial system that we can all visualize for hundreds of millions of people. Now, we'll retain those resources, but we're going to use them more effectively, right? If someone needs a crazy brain surgery, you need a hospital for that. But if someone needs a basic diagnostic inside their GI tract, especially in their stomach, maybe you just don't need any of that stuff. And we see an opportunity there.
Yeah, 100%. I think I think the key to medicine here is with precision, like being able to predict things as far in advance as possible, which means like earlier intervention and everything. The other side of it is that there's so many things that really don't require a visit to the doctor. I think telemedicine is extremely important. Even myself as a patient, my primary care was recommending that I go see a specialist for something just, for essentially I have slightly high cholesterol. And I was like, okay, there's some questions I have about like potentially moving to this different way of managing my cholesterol. Do I have to go to the office for this? And I think that when it comes to diagnostics, I think the key is like, how do we start setting this up so all this can be done from the patient's home? Because again, not everybody lives in an area where you can go to a doctor like 10 minutes and 15 minutes away. There's some people who they're working a job, they have kids, like they cannot afford to spend that time off. And then what ends up happening is that by the time they do get to the doctor, it's 2-3 years past the point that they should have, and whatever disease they might have has really advanced. So I love that essentially your story is one of like accessibility and access.
It bugs me to think that we spend all this money and we reach 1% of people, right? There's this privileged group of people, and it's hard to define like people in acute GI distress as a privileged population, but for the people who actually make it into a hospital to get that upper endoscopy, you're in the 1% range of people. It is not easy to get to. And there's no boogeyman out there that's trying to make it hard. It's just that we always have an opportunity with better technology to take a difficult conversation and turn it into an awesome conversation. So if it was
100%,
if it was 1850 and you wanted to cross the Atlantic with your family, it would be like, do we want to get on a clipper ship, or is there a steamship option? Maybe a sailboat or a steamboat, maybe. And it's going to take a month, maybe, or something like that. Now it's okay. Let's just go on Google Flights and see who has a cheap flight to London, because I want to go to London today and I want to do it for could be a couple $100. And technology is what allowed us to have a much more fun conversation there. And we think that PillBot is part of this new medicine space where let's not argue about the constraints from the old world. Let's not try to be a winner in a conversation where there's a winner and a loser. Let's create a completely new paradigm where everyone's a winner, right? Doctor's a winner, patient's a winner, the insurance company is a big winner, right? Let's do this faster, better, cheaper.
I have to bring this up because it was like funny that we were talking about this earlier today. I tweeted on X this photo, and for those who don't see it, essentially it's like life expectancy compared to healthcare spending. So the U.S.'s life expectancy is so bad. It's 77 and a half, and our healthcare spending is 12K compared to Germany, all these other countries who are in their 80s, and they spend a third or half of that.
So I recently just celebrated my son, Don Valentine's, cute kid, my first kid. He just turned 4 months old. We had this super standard, safe birth. It was here in the Bay Area at Stanford, which I'm incredibly grateful to have access to that kind of care. No complications of any kind. Everything worked like clockwork. The bill for that experience is approaching $250,000.
Isn't that
It was
crazy?
220,000 right off the bat when we got home. Not to us, to our insurance company. Thank you, insurance. Right. And then charges came in. And you're just thinking to yourself, like, wow, we here in the United States have definitely built an interesting ecosystem for health. And I feel like a lot of people are right to question it. And when we question it, we just point towards the technological opportunities, right? If I can build a PillBot for less than $100 and it can go do a procedure that might, across all the hospital visits, accumulate $10,000 worth of bills or more, I think that's a good opportunity, right? And you know what? As much as we'd like to improve the US healthcare system, and I know many people are, because of the relatively lethargic reimbursement structure, companies like ours can develop crazy products and look at the reimbursement codes and say, hey, the unit economics for this might actually make sense. And then we'll see after 3, 4, 5 years, does that affect how we do reimbursements? Of course it will, right? PillBot will change the reimbursement landscape. But right off the bat, the reimbursement landscape for a PillBot procedure pays out really well for a gastroenterologist. And you're not taking someone that spent half their life.
So you guys have, there's an existing code that you can use.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, that's
So,
fantastic.
yeah, we have an amazing predicate device. There's a brilliant team called Onx Robotica that released a product through FDA in the US market. It's called NaviCam. It's just like PillBot in the sense that it's a moving eyeball in the stomach. The way that they did three-dimensional motion was to use magnetic fields, because magnetic fields permeate the human body quite well. And so they created this awesome magnetic machine that can induce motion into a capsule. And patients are loving this thing because it means you can swallow a pill and get an upper endoscopy. Now, with that being said, the facility does need to purchase that piece of capital equipment. And then the patient does actually have to go to the hospital to get into the capital equipment. It's a huge improvement, but it also means that there's room for further improvement and further adventures. And while I would say in the human stomach, I think we're definitely going to distinguish ourselves, the magnetic technology is also super useful in parts of the body where we would have real trouble being effective right now. So we're not actually here to say we're better than any other new technology. We're here to say that we think we have an amazing role to play in modern healthcare. I think we can make our contribution, and I think that the economics are really exciting for what we're up to. But thanks to so many people trying to improve healthcare, we have regulatory predicates that get us through FDA quickly. We have reimbursement codes that were hard fought for and won by those guys that we can plug into. Fingers crossed. And so it's actually the US healthcare system, although it's imperfect, is an appropriate place for medical device or med tech founding teams to look at, because we might have the biggest acute opportunities. And if you're going to launch a startup company, you have to have investors on board that see an exciting path. So I actually love working here in the US. I just want to, play my role with this team and making the improvements we can.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. And Tori, as we round things out again, for some of the investors who are listening, I feel like you guys have been extremely efficient with the money that you've raised so far. But overall, how much have you guys raised to date? And then are you currently raising any money? And if you can give us a little bit of insight on that.
Sure. What I can say, it's important for the founders out there. You want to avoid what's called a general solicitation, which means you don't want to go in a public forum and say we're raising money. That the SEC would have questions about that. But what we can absolutely say is that the company is about 5 years old. We've raised something like $7 million to go from notebook sketches to where we are today, which is, I feel like there's several multiples involved of what we've been able to accomplish.
That's amazing that you've been able to accomplish so much with just $7 million. Because I know some like vertically integrated SaaS companies, which are not building robots, have raised like 3-4 times that. And
so it's a punchy team, but I must say that what we've done today has simply earned us a place in the conversation tomorrow. And the adventure is vastly in front of us. It's not behind us. We have so many interesting things to do with this company. For example, PillBot becomes Pill Surgeon. That's going to be a lot of fun. And for people who are interested in this kind of an adventure, I would just say inquire within. We're thrilled to have conversations. And hopefully that's a reasonable answer without stepping on too many toes.
No, 100%. And again, with investors, I always say, if you have a strong interest, go to the website, reach out to the founder and have a discussion to learn more. So with that being said, I want to encourage our audience, one, go follow Endiatx on not just LinkedIn. They also have a formerly known as Twitter platform. I'm still trying to get better by calling it X. It's just weird. But yeah, you guys put out a lot of great content there. I love seeing the videos and everything. And again, the Adam Savage video is awesome. And for those who are investors who are listening, go to the website. That's Endiatx, Endiatx.com to learn more. And I'm your host, Omar M. Khatib. This has been another episode of State of MedTech. Be sure to subscribe to our show. We put out a lot of content that not always makes it into our newsletter. So subscribe so you get the latest and greatest. And we'll see you all next time. Thanks for checking out this episode. If you want to do me a big favor and join so many other people who have helped grow this podcast, take a second and look below. If you're on Apple, give us 5 stars and write a short review. If you're on Spotify, just give us 5 stars. And if you're on YouTube, hit the like button. And most importantly, if you can, subscribe. We release so many different episodes that you may miss. Be sure to subscribe and turn your notifications on. You get extra points with me if you subscribe across all 3 channels. Thank you so much. And if you felt like this episode helped you, send this to somebody who'd really enjoy and appreciate it. Share and spread the love. We'll see you all next time.